Well, Canadians are living longer and changing what it means to age. But living longer has its challenges, and our health has significant financial implications. So, joining us now to talk aging well, planning for Plan B, is Nancy Taylor, a senior wealth advisor at Meridian Credit Union. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So, now approximately a third of Canadians retire earlier than planned. Now, that's a statistic that certainly stunned Christine when we were talking about it earlier.
Because I don't know anybody who's done that.
Right.
I mean, I most people I know want to work past 65. And, you know, if they're downsized, they're looking for something else.
They are.
So that stat really surprised me.
I think the number one reason is because of health issues. And it's something that's going to impact all of us, but it depends on what age it impacts us. So when you say a third of Canadians, a part of that is downsizing, but the other part is the health event, and they haven't really planned for that. It's that it's never going to happen to me, you know, and we don't understand the impact that this could have for ourselves and for our loved ones, on our families.
You're not just talking about a health event on you, the individual, but maybe a spouse or another family member that you have to change your life to care for them.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think of my age, I'm looking after a son who's in university. I have a mother that's in a hospital, and I'm working full time. So, you know, we have a lot on our plates.
Yes.
And for people that don't properly plan for that, because living longer has its costs, you know, and its challenges.
Yeah, well, you do. And also, I think people had their children later. They weren't having their children at 20. Necessarily. Right. So then you really are part of the sandwich generation. And there's a lot of stress, as we both know.
Mm-hmm.
We both have had parents that required a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're living longer, the impacts to the family, you know, it's so prevalent in my practice right now, where there's so many people that have, they live out of town and their parents live in another city, and the impact that has on the family. Even just between spouses, where one has a stroke and the other partner isn't able to properly care for them, and they're living in their home, and the costs associated with that. You know, sometimes because of a health event, there's loss of income, and there's not only the loss of income, but there's what happens if the person's not able to properly fund that, and then you're relying more on your children to help you. So there's the financial impact. There's out-of-cost drugs that aren't part of our proper coverage. You know, there's so many impacts when it comes to the financial.
Okay, so let's go through this because there's a scenario here, and it's like this is like a family that is going downhill fast, and hopefully it is only a scenario. But say Dad has a stroke. Mom is unable to care for him, so they need to pay for care. That's one possibility.
Yep.
Mom wants to stay in the home as she's healthy enough but can't afford the costs of their home and paying for a nursing home for Dad or full-time care. Because as I know, that's about $600 a day for home in Ontario. So they weren't financially prepared to pay for care. So they asked the daughter for help. Now, the daughter, who's a nurse, is a single mom who was using Mom as a caregiver for her child. So the daughter's working part-time, going to university part-time to improve her income. She drops out of school to help care for Dad. So the daughter can't afford to pay for childcare on part-time work, moves in with Mom and Dad to save on housing to afford the childcare. And then daughter can't spend as much time with her son as she's helping care for Dad. So then you end up with a mom, disabled dad, daughter, grandson, now living in the same house, full of tension and stress, trying to provide care for Dad and the grandson while living in tight quarters. So that's just, you know, a nightmare for...
It's a worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And not everybody's going to walk away with this scenario.
No,
but
it's
parts of
an
it,
example.
I think people can relate to.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine a perfect world if you've planned properly for that, where you've had the family conversation, where you can sit down, because it's going to happen to all of us. It's just a matter of when. So if we can sit down and properly have that conversation openly as a family in the event of a health event, you can just imagine how much better planned we would be, how much better, how equipped we would be to, because it's already a stressful, heightened time already.
Let me ask you this, because I think it would go through a lot of people's minds as we're talking. Can you really fully plan for what may happen? Because there are a gazillion scenarios. So what is your advice to people if they were to come in and say, I want to make sure that I have a buffer? Just
It
in
starts
case.
just having the conversation. Fidelity Investments put out a great book called Aging Well. And in the book, there's a one-pager in the back that goes over all the people that are important in your life, or the people that are important in your family's life that you're caregiving for. It goes over, who their pharmacist is, who are the neighbors, who is their financial advisor, are there any life insurance policies outstanding. It's just a great one-pager so that if something does happen and you end up in the hospital at any age, whoever is there to look after you has that right in front of them as a great resource guide. That's a great gift you can give your family and your loved ones that are going to be properly caring for you. Because I think we do a really good job planning for when we're no longer here. But what about while we're still here? Mm-hmm. Because we're living so much longer, I think that needs to be part of the conversation and maybe even a deeper conversation about what that looks like. You're right. We can't plan for what's going to happen tomorrow, but we all know we're aging.
Right.
After 50, we start losing our financial awareness. And at 60, it goes down by about 1% a year. So wouldn't it be great in a perfect world to start planning and preparing for that while you're fully financially capable?
So what does that look like, preparing?
Starts with a conversation with your family, sitting down. They're not always open to hearing it, especially children. They
And
don't
so
wanna,
you're having a conversation about if I get sick.
yeah. What
And I
happens
can't
if
look
mom
up.
is in the hospital, or what happens if you're talking to a parent? Like I had this conversation with my mother. She's diabetic, so I thought, Mom, there may come a day where you're not able to look after yourself. What would you like me to do? How do you feel about end of life conversations with your family? Because you put it in writing, but for a child to actually act on it, without
having the conversation.
What a great gift you can give your loved ones by just having that conversation about how you feel about do not resuscitate and how you feel about feeding tubes and these things that will be the demise of all of us eventually.
Or if you want to have medical assistance in dying, that's something that you have to plan while you still have all your faculties around you. Because if you say you slipped into dementia and you didn't want to live that kind of a life, you can't make the decision then.
Right.
So you need to alert your family and make all those arrangements
ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely ahead of
time for sure.
But I think children, I've tried to sort of broach that subject a little bit with my children, and they're not very receptive.
Mm-hmm. These great guides that are out there, like the one from Fidelity, actually give you different scenarios on how to approach it. Because you're right, nobody wants to think of their parents no longer with them, right? Nobody wants to look at that, but it is inevitable. And they give you different tools and different ways of having that conversation. So one may not work, but another one might. Mm-hmm. So I encourage listeners to pick up a resource book, sit down with a financial advisor and have the conversation, and then maybe approaching the family. And even having a conversation with the advisor, with the whole family. So there's a third person there.
Do you do that?
We
sometimes?
do. All financial advisors do.
Really?
Because we want to, number one, we would love to meet the next generation because they're the future inheritance, you know. So, but we also want to protect their loved ones as well and make sure that they've got all their ducks in an order when it comes to planning for how they age, because aging well today means so much different than it did 10 years ago. I have 80-year-olds that are still golfing and playing tennis and have a great lifestyle, but I have 60-year-olds that aren't in good health. So it affects all of us. And I think using these resources, because it's different now, things have changed. So you have to change how you approach them. It can't be just the same thing that we've always done, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, what a wonderful lens to look through.
And 8 million Canadians are unpaid caregivers. So there's a lot of us out there that would really benefit by going down this road and planning properly and using these resource guides.
Mm-hmm. And it's very important to have the conversation, no matter how difficult it is, with your parents about, do they want to be able to stay at the home? Are there preparations to help cover the expense if you want to stay at home? Because some people are terrified of going to a retirement home, or maybe it's just like having that conversation about going to see various places now to decide what your parent might want to do in the future, so that they're not afraid. Because I think afraid is what many are.
I think fear is what stops us from looking at it, and fear is what stops the kids from wanting to talk about it with their parents. But in a perfect scenario, I think if you can overcome that fear through conversation and communication, I think that's really key, because it takes it takes that fear away and allows you to move to the next level.
So Nancy, where can people go to learn more and access those resources that you were talking about?
They can reach us at www.meridian.cu.ca. We have all our advisors listed on the website, and just reach out to a financial advisor and start the conversation.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.